Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, ja, bonjour, namaste, jumbo. Bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jedley. Welcome to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from the beautiful, absolutely beautiful, friendly, welcoming, inclusive neighborhood of Reedville, located in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so very honored and absolutely delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. We do that by sharing fun, thoughtful, and thought-provoking conversations with fascinating people who just happen to be writing books for kids of all ages. You can join us in this mission by telling all of your family and friends about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Good Pods, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Amazon Music, CastBox, Player FM, Audible, wherever you find your favorite shows. Wonderful, fun food show for you today. First up, Shannon Anderson will be here to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called I Love Blueberries. And later in the show, we'll be listening back to a conversation we had with ESPN sports analyst Michael Yam and talking about his book, Fried Rice and Marinara. This episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Marie Nichols was recently on my Connecticut Book Festival's podcast, and what a delightful woman. One of the things she said really struck home with me. She said, parents nurture with care, siblings are taught to share, but grandparents embrace the dares. We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest is a colorful, fun-filled book where this grandmother dares to embark on a wild journey with her grandson into the dinosaur forest. It's available on Amazon. It's also available on bookshop.org. You and your kids and you and your grandkids are going to love this book. It's We're Going to the Dinosaur Forest, written by Marie Nichols. Hey families, would you like to share a miracle with your kids? At the Wolf Conservation Center, hope was fading. The endangered Mexican wolves dreamed of a pup, but none had come. Until one tiny miracle changed everything. Meet Trumpet, a real-life wolf pup whose incredible birth brought joy, hope, and a lesson in conservation. Trumpet the Miracle Wolf, written by Leocadia George, is a heartwarming true story that will inspire your whole family. Teach your kids the power of hope, love, and protecting endangered species. Get your copy today and join the wild adventure. Hey, my friends, here's something to think about. What if mistakes weren't something to fear, but something to celebrate? In It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe, young readers meet Bink, a lovable little monster who worries they're not good enough when they struggle or make mistakes. But then, Bink discovers a powerful truth. Every uh-oh is an opportunity. Every question is a chance to grow. And every child deserves to know perfection isn't what makes you special. Curiosity, courage, and self-love do. A must-read for parents, teachers, and anyone who wants to help kids build resilience and confidence. Get your copy of It's Okay Not to Know by Brenda Doe today, because learning begins when we stop fearing the unknown. I am so excited. You know, one of the things about being the host of Reading with Your Kids, I have met so many wonderful, amazing guests and had a chance to sit down and speak with people that I never would have had a chance to speak with. But more importantly, I have made real friendships with a whole lot of people who have been on the show, and today's guest is one of them. She's back on the show to celebrate her brand new picture book. It's called I Love Blueberries. Please welcome back Shannon Anderson. Hey, Shannon, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I used to refer to Shannon as like my second favoriteest teacher in the world because my wife is my first favorite teacher. But Shannon is a former teacher. She retired to devote full time, all her energy and attention into writing. This is fantastic.
Yes, it's been wonderful. I pinch myself sometimes that I get to do this.
Yeah. And you're also doing a whole lot of school visits, which I know is just the best thing in the world.
It is. It is so much fun. I love getting into schools and getting kids excited about reading and writing.
Yeah. So these days you're getting kids excited about I Love Blueberries. Talk to us about this book, please, Shannon.
Sure. Well, I Love Strawberries was the book that came out before I Love Blueberries, and that one came out in 2022, but it was a long road. It was the very first story I ever wrote. And so even though I got other things published first, the I Love Strawberries one I had written first. And I worked really hard to try to get that one published. And I always share this at author visits with kids because I also teach growth mindset and how we should never give up. That book, I Love Strawberries, was rejected for 10 years. And sometimes it was because it's kind of longer than a standard picture book. Sometimes it was because there's a diary format plus also the narrative text, so it would be difficult to format and illustrate. There were all kinds of reasons, but what I ended up doing is just I kept trying to revise. I kept getting feedback and critiques until finally it landed in the hands of the perfect publisher for this type of book, Feeding Minds Press, and they are the publishing arm of the Farm Bureau Foundation. Now, my angle with the book was that it is a book about perseverance, determination. Like this girl wants to grow her own strawberries and she stops at nothing. Any excuse her parents give her, she comes up with a new mission to figure out how she can circumvent that and how she can raise money to get the strawberries. She can find a spot in the yard where they could plant them. She can prove that she can grow something else to prove she could take care of them. So there are all kinds of things. And that was my angle. But the angle with Feeding Minds Press was they see this book as she's growing strawberries, and we get to see the strawberry life cycle through the book, and through her diary entries, it's in real time of how the strawberries grow. And I had put in there some different fun strawberry facts about its seeds and how it grows and the runners that plant themselves, all kinds of things like that. And then this was embraced by the ag community. So I've done a lot of presentations for Farm Bureau Foundation events and Ag in the Classroom, different volunteer events where I'm sharing ways that they could use that in the classroom. And so knowing all of this, that they really liked the ag aspect, when strawberries did really well, which I do share with the kids, even though it was rejected for 10 years, it is more successful than any of my books combined. And I've written over 20 books. It has won more awards than all of them combined. Ryan Reynolds read it on his TV show, Bedtime Stories with Ryan. It got a National Book of the Year award, the Good Housekeeping Best Rated Picture Book. So even though it has the most rejections, it did really well. And because it did well, they accepted my second manuscript of I Love Blueberries. And knowing ahead of time that what they really appreciated about the I Love Strawberries book was the ag component, I made sure that the blueberry book had a lot of some modern ag angles to it. And so it's still the same Jolie. She's still very determined. And this time, of course, with a different fruit. But this time she has a friend, Margot. And Margot moves into her neighborhood, and she moves from Maine. And one of the things that Maine is known for is blueberries. So they both have an interest in blueberries. And so in this book, I have them wanting to grow blueberries, but her parents aren't on board with the blueberry thing. It's her teacher she has to convince this time. And when they start the school year, they see that their teacher has grown strawberries hydroponically in the classroom. And that gives them the idea that, hey, maybe we could grow blueberries that way, because being a summer harvest, if they grew them at school, they wouldn't really get to enjoy, the fruit for their labor. Mm-hmm. And so they have to prove that they would be able to do this hydroponically. And again, they have to be kind of entrepreneurs and figure out how they're going to raise the funds for the hydroponic systems. And they end up, it's a great STEM type book, because they come up with, instead of buying a commercial hydroponic system, which they make all kinds of small and large systems that would be fairly easy to just go ahead and put some blueberry bushes in there, but they decide they're going to do it a different way. They're going to use like 5-gallon buckets. They're going to use fish tank pumps for the air. And so they come up with ways that they can do a do-it-yourself hydroponic system. So my hope is that through this book that families and schools alike will see that they could do this on their own or through a hydroponic system that they buy, online or in an ag store of some kind, and that maybe they will try growing their own blueberries.
There's so much going on in this book. There's growth mindset, there's STEM, there's introducing kids to nature and agriculture. So cool. How did you juggle all that stuff as you were writing?
Well, when I wrote the strawberry book, I was trying to figure out, I think the hardest parts of books are the beginnings and the endings, because you want both to stick with the reader. And so through this whole season of growing strawberries, which I grew my own strawberry patch for 10 years. Now that I've moved, I need to plant another one, but I always grew strawberries. And right at the end of strawberry season, when we're all done with the strawberry harvest, then at least in Indiana, the next season that's a big producer is blueberries. And so my strawberries were early berries, and they were always done like the end of June. And then I remember always going to the blueberry farms and picking blueberries in July. Well, this is really crazy how this happened, but at the end of the strawberry book, her mom takes her to a blueberry farm. And because I use this diary format, we have dates for everything. And it just so happens, I just picked the date July 8th as the day that they go. And I had no idea until after I had written it and it was turned in and accepted and everything, that July 8th is National Blueberry Day. And so that was kind of a fun surprise that I had picked National Blueberry Day, that they go to pick blueberries. Well, it only seemed logical that here she is at this blueberry farm. She's going to get some ideas in her head that, Mom, I really love blueberries. And so I've had lots of kids, when they read the strawberry book, they say, is there going to be a blueberry book? And for so long, I was like, I'm not sure. But now finally, yes, there is going to be a blueberry book. And so I pick up with this new book, the I Love Blueberries book, on that same day, July 8th, National Blueberry Day. And this is where her mom so Jolie and her mom have picked blueberries. And as you know, at a U-Pick farm, you go up to the counter and you get it weighed, and then you find out how much you owe. And so she is there, and I chose a female farmer as the owner of the blueberry farm. Mm-hmm. And so from here, she gets really excited about blueberries, and the blueberry farmer teaches her a little bit about germinating those seeds. So if she wanted to plant her own. So it's literally germinating seeds, but also figuratively planting some seeds in her mind about, this would be really cool to grow blueberries also. And then when she's at school, she tries to convince her teacher that that would be a good idea. And he's not so sure, because he knows, that this is a pretty big undertaking, and they're going to have to take care of those. They're going to have to harvest those. They're going to have to come up with the equipment and the funding to get it in the first place. But it just so happens this teacher is the husband of the lady who owns the blueberry farm, the blueberry farmer. And so they are able to work out some things and bring in people from the community and do a little presentation to get them excited about blueberries and about helping to chip in or donate items that they need in order to grow their own blueberries. So it's a lot of teamwork and, like you said, science, STEM, agriculture, and in the very end, I don't know if I should be a story spoiler or not, but in the very end, there is a different kind of food that Jolie gets pretty excited about. And so, of course, my hope is that that book will, that story will become a book, because at this point in time, it's not contracted. But I'm really hopeful. And what I've been told is we have to see how the blueberry book does first. And so hopefully it does well, because I have a whole different kind of food that I want to bring in after blueberries.
I love it. And wow, it makes perfect sense for a series. And if it does take off as a series, man, you're going to be writing until the end of time.
Well, I get lots of suggestions from kids at author visits. You need to do a banana book or you need to do a watermelon book. And I'm like, yeah, I will do as many fruits and vegetables as I can, but we have to get a yes first.
I love it. Well, I am sure, when I was down in El Salvador a year ago performing and touring, I was there during pineapple season, I guess.
Okay.
Because there, as we're driving down the road, there are these little stands selling pineapples, and like for 5 miles, and it was just a wall of pineapples, and I'm like, my mind is exploding. I'd never seen anything, I'd never seen more than whatever's at the local supermarket
Sure.
in terms of pineapples. But boy, what a great thing to stumble on. I think authors are always love, like, oh, I hope I have that series where I can write 7 or 8 or whatever. And boy, you knew from the very first book that this has potential. This has legs. I could keep writing about this forever.
Possibly, hopefully, right? It's been on my vision board to have a series. That's just always been a dream to have a picture book series. And so I hope it keeps going. The kids seem to really enjoy the books. And so, yeah, I hope we get to produce some more foods and get kids excited about growing their own food. So many kids don't even realize where their food comes from. Some will go to a farmer's market and get a little bit more of an idea, but most of us, take our kids with us to the grocery store, and that's where they see the fresh fruit and vegetables. And they think that, it just comes from a fruit and vegetable factory or something. I don't know. But I think it's so cool when kids can see how it's grown and to learn about the life cycles of various foods. And when I was teaching and when my kids were going through school, there was always an emphasis on apples at the beginning of the year because the apple harvest is in September and the beginning of October. And so that's a common thing that teachers will talk about is the apples and how do apples grow and Johnny Appleseed, all of the things about apples. And then in October, of course, it's the pumpkins and the pumpkin life cycle. And we go to pumpkin patches for field trips and things. But it seems like that has been done over and over and over and over. I mean, it's just like there are so many books about apples and pumpkins. And I know that there aren't as many summer harvest foods out there, those kinds of books and resources, because kids aren't in school during that time. So they're not learning about it in real time. Mm-hmm. But if you can grow them hydroponically or in a greenhouse, there are so many schools that are getting, through the American Farm Bureau Foundation, teachers, if you're listening, there are so many cool grant opportunities that you can get a whole greenhouse or you can get some hydroponic supplies or even commercial systems for your school because they want to support teachers who want to bring ag in the classroom. And there are ag in the classroom volunteers that come in all over. Like every Farm Bureau county in each state has some kind of ag in the classroom volunteer program where they'll come into the classroom. It's no cost to the school and they get to bring in things to teach kids about all these cool things about growing your own foods.
That's so cool. As we're talking, I remember my youngest brother, we grew up in the city in a poor working class neighborhood, not a lot of green space, lots of concrete and everything. We had this tiny little piece of land in front of our 3-decker, 3-family home. And he somehow just loved the idea of farming. And he grew potatoes, he grew corn, and this little he even grew an orange once. It's like a tiny thing. Nowadays, he does own his own little farm here in Massachusetts. And so if you're listening out there and you're thinking, oh, this is a great book for kids in Indiana and Nebraska and maybe Maine where they have room, but we live in the city and my kid couldn't relate to this. I bet your kids can relate to this.
Absolutely. Yes. And even, you can grow things in small spaces. I mean, last year I lived in an apartment for a year, and I had a tiny, like, it was a joke of a balcony. It's one of those Juliet balconies that's like 18 inches wide. And I just got a planter that fit on the balcony, and I was growing my own spinach and onions and things just right there on that tiny balcony. But all it takes is some sunshine. And if you don't even have access to that, if you have no balcony and you're in a small space, you can get the grow lights, and they help your food produce even more often. You have a better harvest. And when you're growing things inside, of course, you don't have the pest control issues, so you don't have to use pesticides and things like that. So it's even healthier. And so, yeah, there are opportunities to grow things no matter where you live.
Yeah, I agree. I think the more our kids understand about the world, where our food comes from, how it's grown, how it moves around the country, I think the better off we all are. We talk a lot about being mindful and being purposeful, and our kids should understand where their food comes from.
Yeah. Well, and there are so many other lessons that go with that. I mean, think about we talk about the animal life cycles and the human life cycle and all of that, but there are plant life cycles, and they're very different from each other. And thinking about like the technology, oh my goodness, if you go on YouTube and you start looking at some of the modern farming that happens, it is incredible the different kinds of machinery that have been invented to harvest various things. I mean, we think, at least for me, I think of small scale, like going out and picking things, like at a U-pick farm or something. But, and here in Indiana, we have corn and soybeans. So of course there are big combines going out in the fields, but there are machines that will take various, like fruit trees, and it's a machine that spreads out this great big, like blanket thing, and it has a thing that's like a tree shaker, and it shakes the tree, and then the different fruits or nuts or whatever can fall down onto that spread, and then that is folded up and then dumped into something. I mean, it's really cool that kids could see these different innovative ways that we've had to come up with to harvest, so that it can be done in a more timely fashion and not cost as much money to hire laborers to have to hand pick things. I mean, there are so many cool advances in technology with agriculture. It's crazy. And some of the ways that, land is being used up to build and to develop, whether it's housing or whether it's warehouses for all of the Amazon distribution centers. I mean, the land is limited. We only have so much land. And so there is also an advance right now going on to make sure that we can feed the world. We have to find ways, innovative ways that we can still grow things. And sometimes that might be in the form of, if you look up vertical farming, they have all kinds of ways that they can grow things now vertically, just like the concept of a skyscraper. We don't have room to put all these buildings this way, but if we stack it this way. And so there are just interesting ways. And what is more important to humans than food? Like, we have to have it to live. Yep. So I think it's just a great thing for kids to be studying. And the other thing about it is there are business principles that can be learned from it. And, how can we best yield a harvest here that is profitable for the farmer, but is also affordable for the consumer? So there are just lots of different things that we can learn in schools about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know. You were mentioning U-pick in the field trips, and my wife always took her classes to an U-pick at apple farm for a field trip, and she would always invite me out. And every year, we get on the bus and we drive an hour outside of Boston, and we get to the farm, and the kids would have their bags filled up in 5 minutes. Yeah. Ready to go back. Tell me, you hinted at me earlier that there's a new book coming that's not part of the Blueberry series. Can you give us a little sneak peek about that?
Oh, sure. So I wrote this book, Heroes Don't Have to Fly, and it's about a little bird who he can't really fly, so he's on a scooter, so his name is Scooter, and he is out to use his words for good. So we know that words can encourage us, like when someone gives you a compliment or cheers for you, that's uplifting. But we also hear ways that people use words that are hurtful, and that can sometimes stick with you your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just really important that kids understand the power of their words. And so when I wrote Heroes Don't Have to Fly, that's what it was all about. And my original title was Scooter the Word Bird. And then the publisher came back and said, we're wondering if we could change the title. And I was really bummed because I really liked the title Scooter the Word Bird because it's about Scooter and he's using his words. So it just made sense. And, the word bird, we've got the rhyme there. I mean, I was really happy with the title, but then they said, well, the reason we're asking is because we would like to make Scooter the Word Bird the title of a series. And you need a standalone title for this first book. And I was like, oh, you mean I can write more books to go with this? So I was like, yes, we can change the title. And so I have had the opportunity to write another book to go with this series, and it's called Speak Up with Your Beak Up. And so that one is, again, using your words, but this time to advocate, whether it's advocating for yourself or for others, to just speak up when something is happening that shouldn't be happening or that is wrong. And so that's the next book in that series, which also releases in April. I don't have my hands on a copy yet, but it's coming soon, and I'm very excited about that because this is 2 books that ended up getting to have another book, after them. So I'm hoping that it continues because that's super fun when you get to continue a character and find out new adventures for them to go on.
Awesome. Well, you have an open invitation. Come back in a couple of months to celebrate the new book in the Scooter the Bird series.
I would love to.
Yeah. Hey, before you go, any plans for you to tour some schools in Maine with I Love Blueberries?
You know what? I don't have any, but I would love to. So if you're listening in Maine and you need an author visit or a blueberry program, let me know. I'm working on blueberry programs right now. I have some cool activities that go with the book and also some little art things that go with it to make some cool blueberry art. So yeah, that would be amazing.
Awesome. Shannon, remind everybody where they can go to find out more about I Love Blueberries and to find out maybe if you're in Maine and you have a classroom, how they can invite you to join their school.
Sure. My website's probably the easiest. It's shannonisteaching.com. And there's a contact me tab on there. You can also go to my books tab to find out about any of these books and my resources tab to get free resources to go with them. So there's all kinds of stuff there. And as far as the blueberry one, Feeding Minds Press is the website of the publisher that does all ag related books. So if you're really interested in the farm books and the ag related books, they have all kinds of them and great activities and resources as well.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm just curious, do you use that ancient piece of equipment that's right over your shoulder there to write your books?
The typewriter? No. Although I did have one in college, if that doesn't date me.
Yes, I had one that you didn't have to plug in back in high school and college. So.
Yeah.
We've had a great time speaking about blueberries with the author of I Love Blueberries. It's the new picture book from our friend Shannon Anderson. Hey, Shannon, thanks for being back on Reading with Your Kids.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
My friends, if you have ever thought about owning a business that's fun, rewarding, and makes a valuable contribution to kids' education, well, Brooklyn Robot Foundry is calling your name. I recently met Ginny Young. She's the founder of Brooklyn Robot Foundry. And let me tell you, she is incredible. Her passion for getting kids excited about STEAM, that's STEM plus art, it's contagious. I'm telling you. This isn't your average kids program. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is all about hands-on, screen-free STEAM fun. These kids get to build a different robot each class and take it home with them afterwards. Kids love it. Parents are raving about it. And now you can own a franchise and bring this incredible experience to families in your community. Now, this isn't your typical franchise. Brooklyn Robot Foundry is a mobile, flexible business with a deep curriculum that's making a real impact in schools and communities around the country. Franchise owners get a proven curriculum, full training, and support from a passionate team. So what are you waiting for? Please visit bit.ly/robotjed. That's bit.ly/robotjed. And let them know you heard about it on Reading with Your Kids. Are you looking for a creative way to bond with your kids? Let me tell you all about Drawing with Your Kids, the ultimate destination for artistic adventures. Join us as we dive into the wonderful world of children's books with renowned illustrators guiding you step by step. From beloved characters to whimsical scenes, unleash your imagination and create cherished memories together. Whether you're a seasoned artist or just picking up a pencil, there's something for everyone at Drawing with Your Kids. Please visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com, and click on the Drawing with Your Kids link at the top of the page and let the creativity flow. Drawing with Your Kids, where every stroke brings stories to life. Join us right now from right outside of Los Angeles. Our guest is here today to celebrate his beautiful children's picture book. It's called Fried Rice and Marinara, two of my favorite things in the world. Please welcome to the show, Michael Yam. Hey, Michael, how are you?
I'm doing great, but Jed, maybe the bigger question for you is, have you actually tried that combination before?
I am happy to say I have not.
You're not alone.
I think my dog has.
So it'll always keep you light, though, and make it interesting for you.
So what was the inspiration to combine these two delicacies into a children's book?
Yeah, Jed, it's a great question. This has been a real passion project for me for the last couple of years or so. And then to watch it come to life in an animated video story, which is available on YouTube for free, and now see it come to life in an actual book has just been absolutely amazing. I never would have thought, a couple of years ago when I started this project that it would actually even get to a book format, if I'm being totally honest with you. But I think a lot of it, Jed, has to do with access. And, over the course of the last few years or so, my cousins who are like my sisters, they have a bunch of kids between the two of them. And, the question would always arise, like, hey, Mike, do you know a book like this? I'm Chinese and Italian, and my cousins who are Chinese, one of them is her husband is Jewish, and she said, look, I'm just looking for more stories for mixed race kids, for Nate and for Emma and Sophia, and she's like, I'm just struggling to find some. And in my mind, I thought, well, God, there's got to be, now there's so many different platforms, like maybe I can try to use my background as a storyteller, which is more on the athletic side. I've been working, for NFL Network now for a couple of years and covered college football and was at ESPN for a long period of time. And I said, it's definitely a different medium, but it's something that I'm definitely interested in and love the idea of trying to create a story that had an Asian male character as a lead, which quite honestly, Jed, just doesn't exist in a large number. And it's not something that I had when I was a kid. So there was a lot of different motivations, mostly from a family perspective, but also from the idea of trying to help cultivate and plant some seeds for younger Asian children that, hey, storytelling is an actual path. It's a viable path for a career.
We talk a lot here on the podcast about the beauty of books and that they can be mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors and give kids an opportunity to see themselves positively portrayed in the pictures of books. And in addition to a male character, I'm guessing from the title that this is a character with a couple of different ethnicities going on.
Yeah, Chinese and Italian. And, the premise of the story is Mikey's about to turn 4 and, he's got his birthday party, which I think we can all remember back to our childhood and the exciting time that comes with your birthday. And his mom says, look, man, like you gotta figure out what you want to eat. Like that's a big dilemma. It's a big decision. And Mikey all of a sudden, freezes. He struggles. He's like, well, what am I supposed to do? I'm Chinese and Italian. And it's almost like this tug, this push and pull here. Like, hey, do I pick Chinese food or do I pick Italian food? And, candidly, it was at times in my life, in my childhood, I almost felt like I was picking sides. I think there was a lot of positives that I was able to take away from being Chinese and Italian. And by the way, the birthday parties, my food, I always felt like was the best food because it was both Chinese and Italian food. It wasn't the fried rice and marinara, it was the mix that was on the plate. But I'm sure some of that sauce sometimes got on top of that rice, during the course of the birthday festivities. But, for me, to see this character, I wanted to basically take a common theme like a birthday party and, basically have that struggle, that back and forth. So Mikey, goes to his grandmother's and his Chinese grandmother says, well, I'm from Hong Kong. We had Chinese food. And, his Italian grandmother says, well, I'm from Italy and we had Italian food. And that's when his friend Sophia says, Mike, you're Chinese and Italian. You can do both. And at that point, he's got this idea for fried rice and marinara and he makes it and the kids show up to the party and he's concerned like, hey, this is different. This is weird. Are people, are my friends going to like it? And sure enough, it is a children's book, Jed. So it is a happy ending. And yes, the kids do love the fried rice and marinara.
Well, I mean, I have a feeling there's a lot of 4 and 5-year-olds out there who actually have had fried rice and marinara on their plates.
That's a good point.
It didn't start out that way, and I'm sure they loved it.
Yeah, no, I would hope that was the case. I do think back, it's funny, Jay, that you bring this up because, I'm 41 at this point, so I'm a little far removed from those childhood birthdays, but I still remember the emotions and the fun that I had when I was a kid. But one of the things, that's different about what you get on YouTube, like if you search fried rice and marinara, you can watch the story. If you get the actual book itself, one of the things that was really important to me was this idea of the story not ending when you finish reading that last page. So there's 2 pages at the end of the book, that allows for kids to write and draw their favorite food combinations, their funky food combinations. So, I'm hoping that there's some kids that, basically will finish the book and start thinking about their own, funky food combinations that they either have had, to your point, Jed, or want to go and try. So, to me, it was sort of that thought process that I was hoping would continue when the story was finished.
Well, I love this. My family is not Italian and Chinese. Our family is Irish and Puerto Rican. And for Thanksgiving and all the different holidays, in fact, we're planning a little cookout for tomorrow. We're recording this on July 3rd. So tomorrow for July 4th, we're going to have some Puerto Rican and Irish and American barbecue.
It's amazing.
And it is absolutely a beautiful, beautiful thing. And at this point in our life, my beautiful wife and I have been married for almost as long as you've been alive. It's just, it's a no-brainer. And of course, you're going to have that Irish potato salad with that arroz con gandules. And I think if one of them wasn't there, one of our guests from either side would say, hey, where's that? It's missing. You don't have everything here.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think to your point, I think a lot of us culturally use food as a vehicle to unite and to connect. And I think for you and your own family experiences, and certainly I think a lot of people, I hope, that message will resonate, and they have their, mixed identities or blended families that are together, and they're listening to you, Jed, talk about the food that's going to be there. They're hopefully will check out fried rice and marinara and go, oh my God, you're right. Like, this is what we do on a regular basis. And I think from a literature standpoint, I mean, you've been at it on this podcast for, 6-7 years at this point. Over 1,000, almost 2,000, right? Almost 2,000 episodes. I think the more you talk to authors, I guarantee of like those almost 2,000 authors that you've, probably interviewed and other guests on this podcast, I think the vast majority of them, or at least a good percentage, have backgrounds that are similar to ours, right? Where I'm Chinese and Italian, and yet your wife is Puerto Rican and you're Irish. Like, I think people can connect to these types of stories. And I've always been fascinated and quite honestly shocked by the limited inventory that is available for families who have this. I've been sort of doing a lot of research over the last, few weeks and months, and it's always shocking to me about when I read some of the statistics around stories, children's stories and the lack of diversity around some of those stories. University of Wisconsin just did the study. You're basically almost as likely to get a story about an animal or an object than you are to get a story about someone from, a diverse background. And that's shocking to me and quite honestly pretty sad. You use that phrase, the mirrors and the windows and the sliding doors. I don't know how, as a child, if you're inundated with one type of story, to your point on this idea and this theme of mirrors and windows, if I'm a white child who's getting nothing but positive narratives on a consistent basis, I think I'm going to have potentially maybe an inflated amount of empowerment that's there. And I think on the flip side, if I'm a child that is from a diverse background and I'm not getting those stories, but I'm getting the ones that have, predominantly white characters and these really positive narratives, I think it can affect a little bit of the self-esteem as well and really question what's possible. I think about even my own career as a broadcaster. Jed, I had no idea growing up as a kid that this was a viable path for me. And look, here it is. I mean, NBA TV, ESPN, Pac-12 Network, and now NFL Network. Like I'm in it. Like this is what my life and my career is. And it really did take, I didn't think about this until I got to college. And all it took was me to see Michael Kim on ESPN. And I paused and I said, oh my God, I've never seen an Asian dude do sports before. And I think that planted a seed and put me on this path.
Well, I'm really happy that you are creating books like Fried Rice and Marinara. We do celebrate the mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. As somebody who is white and almost 100 years old,
You look great for your age, by the way.
Well, thank you. I personally celebrate the windows aspect of books because I grew up with all the books. People didn't necessarily look like me, and they seemed to have a lot more money than we had growing up. But I understand it was like people who looked like me were in the kids' books. I love the fact that books give kids a glimpse into other cultures, and that through books we have a chance to sit down and go into the home of an Asian family or Middle Eastern family or wherever and discover that, yes, they speak a different language, they wear different clothes, they eat different food, but they think like they feel like I do. And wow, we share a lot more of the important things than we don't share. And I think that that's such an important message for everybody to embrace.
Yeah, it's really well said, Jed, because I think there's a lack of celebration around some of the differences, which are okay, and maybe not recognizing a lot of the similarities that you just touched on between various cultures. Occasionally, if I go into the park and I'm shooting hoops and you just sort of see the playground and you go, oh my God, look at those kids. And I think people who are listening to your podcast who have maybe young children, they'll probably see a lot of those themes, right? Like the kid who shows up to the park doesn't necessarily think to themselves like, oh my God, I don't want to play with this kid because of how they look. And to me, that's at some point in our lives, something kind of breaks off, and the thinking behind some of this stuff is separated. I did see, and not to make this like a super, statistical based interview by any stretch of the imagination, but I saw this study the other day. I think it was the American Association of Psychology or something along those lines. And the numbers were sort of staggering to me. It was, by the time a child is 3 or 4 years old, they're able to already have a thought process behind different races. And I think that to me is really significant, and it speaks to the importance of seeing diversity in those windows that you're talking about for children when they're so young, to be able to connect with other cultures and see some of those differences, but know that that's okay. Like that's a good thing that we're all able to celebrate and associate, some of the positive emotions that come with other cultures.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense that an NFL guy would be all into the stats. So don't apologize.
We could start talking about passing yards for different quarterbacks in the NFL and the wide receiver that I think is going to be the best this upcoming season. Happy to help with fantasy if anyone wants to hit me up on social media.
You know, I'm wondering if your parents, Italian, Chinese parents, experienced the same thing that I experienced with my beautiful wife. And I know that when we first got married, I had some of my friends come up and like, whoa, you know, this must be such a struggle for you. The cultures are so different. And so at first I'm kind of like hearing that it's so different. And yes, I had never seen Sábado Gigante before on television, and the language is different and the food is different. But it didn't take me more than a couple months to realize that the values that my beautiful wife's family share are the same exact values that my family brought me up with. You know, being respectful, caring to others, standing up for others, family. So very quickly, I was telling my friends who were worried about me, you know, dealing with all the challenge. I'm like, going, dude, you know, they eat rice and we eat potatoes, but other than that, we're all the same.
You're right. The starch is in there, and it's making its way into the diet. You know, it's funny. I've heard the stories over the years. You know, my dad is you know, not as vocal on some of the struggles and the stories that he's experienced over the course of his life. In fact, I've learned more about my dad's past through my mom telling me those stories than my dad. You know, a few years ago, I wrote, there was a lot going on with immigration, and I was seeing parents and children separated, and it was really heartbreaking for me. I mean, it was really a struggle. I was watching the news coverage and I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can you take, you know, a kid and take them away from their parents when they've done nothing wrong other than trying to find a better life, because it was such a struggle for them, you know, in their respective homes, which is challenging itself, right? I mean, think about that idea of having to go and leave your home, leave your country to go to a place where it's completely foreign, where you don't speak the language, just because the situation is so dire. So it was really bothersome to me. And I think in a lot of ways it mimicked the path that my dad and his family had coming to this country from Hong Kong. And I wrote sort of a story around how they got here, hoping that I could maybe change one or two people's thought process around immigration and why people go and do it. And, you know, to get back, this is a long-winded way of answering your question, but I think about, you know, some of their experiences, and I'll never forget this. And I think it's always bothered me over the years, but, you know, I was born in the Bronx, and, you know, it's not like we were wealthy when we were growing up, but, my mom and my dad, they had saved, you know, enough money to try to buy a home in New Jersey in the suburbs. And that's ended up where I grew up. And what was interesting was when I was young, my mom told me that they were interested in the house. And she went to go and see the house, and she really liked it and said, oh my God, like this could be, you know, the house that we go and hopefully are able to get. And then my dad went to go and see the house after, and suddenly the house was no longer available. And I remember as a kid, my mom telling me that story and how confused and how I didn't understand like some of the emotions around it. Now I think back and I think how sad that is. You know, and there's a certain level of anger that I have for that, because your folks are, you know, it's my parents, right? Like they're on the receiving end of something inappropriate that in a lot of ways changed the trajectory of their lives, right? Like we ended up in the house that we ended up in. By the way, it ended up, you know, working out great. I love the town. I made great friends, and, you know, all of those things happen, but why did it happen that way? And, you know, I think, you know, to the comments that your friends were making, you know, they cared about you, Jed, like they wouldn't have said those things to you if they didn't. But at the same time, it's like, damn, like so different. Really? Is it different? Because you're right. At the crux of it, it's the attributes that we all have and we all hope that we pass to our kids. Those are the same ones from a cultural standpoint that are universal. Mm-hmm. And I think the more people that recognize what you just discussed, I think we'd all be in a better situation on this planet if people thought that way.
You know, you're absolutely right. And we've hosted kids, international students here in our home from India, from China, from Japan, from the Netherlands, from Italy. And it's the same thing. You know, different languages, different customs, but the same values of love and family and being there for each other. And I'm delighted that there are books like Fried Rice and Marinara out there so that we can start these conversations with our kids and help them realize that this is it's a flawed country, but it's a beautiful country, and there's so much potential here for us to make the dream that not only the founding fathers and Dr. Martin Luther King had, but hopefully that we all have, that this can be a place where a country where everybody truly is welcome and accepted. And it's our kids that are gonna make that happen, I hope.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and hopefully the story will resonate for some families and open up some of these dialogues, and obviously maybe not as elevated and as serious in tone, but I do think, I really do hope that there's, some kid who will, read the book and think to themselves like, oh yeah, like I have a funky food combination. Like, what's that step one, right, in this process and in this conversation? It might sound basic, but if you can have that impact, and I know it sounds really corny and cheesy, and I swear to you, Jed, I'm not necessarily that dude, but I really do hope at least it can change the minds of at least one or two kids out there, and hopefully a larger number than that.
Absolutely. Well, I think the kids are going to be easy. It's going to be the parents that we're going to have to change some minds about. But that's okay, because I really think that just like my kids helped me realize a whole lot of different things that I wasn't able to see, our kids, through the help of books like Fried Rice and Marinara, are going to help us and help their parents see a little bit clearer than we're able to see. I'm curious, now that, a Fried Rice and Marinara out there, did you get any grief from the guys in the locker room? NFL Network?
It's crazy, Jed. When I got hired a few years ago at NFL Network, it was still sort of the remote. I was in the Bay Area because my previous job had me there. And when I moved down to Southern California in our studios, it's actually really cool. They gave me a tour of the locker room, and there really is an actual locker room for all the on-air folks. And we all have our individual lockers that are there. And, they got the nameplates, and I start going through the locker room, Jed. I mean, it's all dudes that, it's got Hall of Famers. It's guys that I went and watched, and they said, hey, any of the empties you can have, like whichever one you want. And I immediately saw this one row of lockers, and there was an empty. And Steve Mariucci, it was next to his locker, and two over from one of my all-time and probably my favorite player of all time, LaDainian Tomlinson, who's two lockers away from me. So I said, hey, I want the one as closest to LT as possible. And it's a thrill because I get to work with Mooch and LT now on a somewhat regular basis, and they're awesome people. But so far, Jed, no one has teased me about the book. In fact, a couple, David Carr, whose locker is right across from me. David's got little ones as well, so I gave him access to the story, and his little ones really have enjoyed it too.
That's wonderful. Well, we've had the pleasure of having Malcolm Mitchell, former New England Patriot, here on the podcast. He wrote a kid's book, and he has a fascinating story. So we want to encourage everybody to check out our interview with Malcolm Mitchell, and right after you finish listening to Michael Yam. I'm curious, Michael, are we going to see a sequel? Maybe Meatball Fried Rice?
I've given it some thought, and I have, right as the computer that we are talking, right behind our screen, there's a folder that's got some drafts. Not another one right now. Well, maybe there is a half-completed manuscript on another food one, but there's two other stories that I feel really, really passionate about, both of which have actually nothing to do with food, but speaks to a lot of the themes that you and I have been discussing on this podcast. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Fried Rice and Marinara does well enough, and someone gives me an opportunity to do another book or two. But I would absolutely love it. This has been so much fun. I love my day job. I love talking about the NFL and doing the studio shows for NFL Network. But this has been such a rewarding experience to be able to have conversations like this with people like you who are, in this space, that are trying to amplify stories for a lot of authors out there that are trying to, have a positive impact on kids in general. So to me, I'm cautiously optimistic that I'll get another opportunity. I really hope that is the case.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, I see the 2-minute, we have 2-minute warning. Is that what they're doing in the NFL?
You got it right. Yes.
Where can we go? The other night I was listening to a Red Sox play-by-play broadcast. My wife was at the game, and there was a rain delay, so I wanted to make sure I was there right when she got out. And the announcer was talking about the opener, the opening pitcher, and I'm like, opener? Isn't it starter? I know I haven't been in tune with sports as I was. But anyways, now that we're in the 2-minute warning, we need to find out where we can go to find out more about Michael Yam and also fried rice and marinara.
Yeah, for sure. So the Twitter handle and the Instagram handle are both the same. It's at Mike_Yam. And then if you're interested in the book, there's 2 ways to access it. It was really important for me through the Vook's platform, which is actually a paid subscription. But Jed, and I probably should have even told you about this before we started, but Vook's does an incredible job of taking children's stories. They fully animate them with read-along text and narration. If you sign up, if you have a kid in your life who you think could benefit from it, if you just use my last name, Yam, you can get a full free year service of the subscription of the Vook's platform, or you can just go to YouTube. We all have access as long as you have the internet. You can type in fried rice and marinara, and you can watch the animated story. And if you're so inclined, I would absolutely love it. But if you're inclined and you think your child or someone in your family would like the actual book, it's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and would love for some of those funky food combinations, the pictures, the drawings, the words. Take a picture on your phone. You can tag me on social media. And maybe that sparks, Jed, the other food book that I will end up doing. If I get a really good combination, one of these kids could be a co-author with me.
That sounds like a great challenge. So get out there. We got to get Michael back on the podcast with a brand new book. In the meantime, everybody check out Fried Rice and Marinara, a beautiful picture book from our guest, Michael Yam. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for being with us.
Jed, really appreciate the time and appreciate the thoughtful conversation.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Reading with Your Kids so much that you're going to make sure you join us for the next episode of the show. We also hope we've inspired you to write a review. A 5-star review would be amazing on whatever platform you are listening to Reading with Your Kids from. We'd love to see reviews of the show. It really helps the algorithm know that people want to find the show, and so they start feeding it into the people. And what an appropriate analogy, feeding Reading with Your Kids to people on our fun food show celebrating blueberries, fried rice, and marinara. Imagine those together. Wow. Anyways, want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful, starting with our guest Shannon Anderson. Please do check out I Love Blueberries, and also check out I Love Strawberries. Also want to thank Michael Yam. We had such a great time talking to him a few years ago. We thought that you would enjoy hearing him again. I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Chris Doherty, Rory Grady. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.